Welcome to AFLEET 2017 tutorial 4 out of 5. In this video, I'll show you how to use the footprint calculator. This calculator assesses the current state of your fleet in regards to petroleum use, greenhouse gases, and air pollutants. The idea is to use this calculator to see the environmental impacts of your fleet. If you want to potentially improve these impacts by adopting alternative fuel vehicles, you can then use the payback and total cost of ownership calculators to consider your options. You can also use the footprint if you already have alternative fuel vehicles in use to take a look at the impacts that they are already. So let's get started. And I should mention that since the footprint calculator assesses the current state of your vehicles, you'll need to have access to data such as the model year, annual mileage, and fuel use of your vehicles. And I'll show you how to input those values in a little bit. So for now, let's just look at the main inputs page. Here we go. So in my opinion, the footprint calculator is the easiest to input values on the inputs page because there's very little that you actually have to put in. You can ignore all this information right here. You can ignore the fuel costs because we're only looking at an environmental analysis. So you can ignore this entire section right here. It won't factor in to the footprint calculator. What you do want to include, however, you want the location information. Skipping past all this stuff. And this is only total cost of ownership. I should mention that the footprint calculator right here, as you can see, just ignore this for right now, I'll get back to it. As you can see right here, it says remaining lifetime of the vehicles, and that value actually draws on these two right here. So you can either change them right here, or you can just type it in right here. But either way, you should just know that it says it's only for total cost of ownership, but it actually is in the footprint calculator as well. But you don't need to worry about any of this stuff. It's only talking about these two. Okay, and then the fuel production assumptions is used in every calculator. If you're not aware of where the fuel is coming from or how it's being produced, you can just stick it with the defaults. But the way that the fuel is being produced is very important if you're looking at the environmental impacts of the fuel that you're using. So it's a good idea to kind of investigate this a little more, especially, for what is your natural gas coming from a renewable source? Is your electricity coming from an area, a region where it's produced more sustainably, and so on. So just take a look at that. And then right here we've got the petroleum use, GHGs, and air pollutant options. This is a new feature to the 2017 calculator. If you used the previous versions, you wouldn't see this because it would just be option 1. Option 1 was what they did for the previous calculators. Now they have this here because there's more options. If you just want to look at well-to-wheels, petroleum use, greenhouse gases, and vehicle operation air pollutants, choose option 1. If you want to get a more comprehensive look, including some of the upstream emissions, then choose number 2. And if you want the most comprehensive look that includes the vehicle cycle, choose number 3. But that's only for light-duty vehicles because of the data that was available when the tool was being made. And then also select your choices right here. And you can just ignore this entire section because that's for the idling reduction calculator. So it's pretty straightforward for the inputs page. You've just got location, you've got how many years you plan on owning it, which you can either input here or in the footprint tab, whichever you prefer. The fuel production assumptions, and how comprehensive you want your analysis to be. So yeah, let's take a look at the footprint. So here's the footprint calculator. As you can see, it's Quite large, a little intimidating when you first look at it, but upon closer inspection, you'll see it's really not that bad. Um, the calculations are kind of occurring horizontally as opposed to the other calculators, so you don't really have to look at all that stuff. But so essentially what you need here, you've got one row for every single vehicle in your fleet. And for each vehicle, you're going to need information such as the model year right here, the annual vehicle mileage, and the fuel use of whatever type of vehicle it is. So if it's just a conventional for light duty, if it's just a gasoline vehicle, then you'd put in the annual fuel use right here. If it's heavy duty, it's probably diesel, put in the fuel use right here. But we have all these other options because you can run these analyses on vehicles that aren't just conventional. If you want to look at the impact of your propane vehicle, you can also put it on in here. And for the most part, you're only going to have one, for each row, you're only going to have like one of these filled out because you're not going to have a car that uses all of these fuels at the same time. But some cars do use multiple fuels, such as hybrid electric vehicles, and in that case, as you can see, we've got gallons up here and kilowatts. So if you had an EREV, then you would put in the fuel use in gallons and of the gasoline, and you'd also put in the kilowatts right here. So yeah. So I came prepared with some information already to input. The trickiest part about using the footprint calculator is honestly just creating the data that you're going to, or the data sheet that you're going to then copy and paste into here, which isn't really that bad, and I'll show you how to do it. So I've got my little, your data is probably going to be much more professional looking than this, but I just typed in a few values just so we can have an example. So let's say I have 20 vehicles. I just chose vehicles 1 through 20. For each vehicle, like vehicle number 10, I have that its model year is 2005. I have a value for the annual vehicle mileage, and I have a value of how many gallons of fuel it used last year, or this year. And in this case, I just have one column because I was just assuming for my little example that these are all passenger cars that run on gasoline. So in that case, all I have to do is just make sure that this data lines up in the appropriate columns here. So I have 20 cars that I'm going to look at, so I want all of these, and I say I want them to be passenger cars. In this case, you don't look at the specific vocation, you just choose one of these, whichever category your vehicle falls under. And I just want 1 through 20 to be, I don't know which one's 20. So I'll just copy and paste these on in. So here's the model year. Copy. And paste. I'm going to put the values. There we go. Okay, so this is the number of cars I would have, and I want these to all say passenger car, which I could just go in and manually, here we go, manually change each one, but that takes a little while, and if you have a whole bunch of cars, do you really want to do that? So you can really just, this is great, you can really just go on down and change all of them, which is pretty convenient. Okay, and then so annual vehicle mileage, I already had some values in this other Excel sheet. Make sure they all line up. Copy and paste. There we go. So we've got my 20 passenger cars, model years, mileage, and in this case, I've got their fuel use right here in gallons. Copy. And which column do I want it in? Well, because I was saying that these are light duty passenger cars and they run on gasoline, I'm just going to put them on in this column, the gasoline column. All right, there we go. So for these ones, that's really all I need to do. I should also take a look to make sure that the remaining lifetime, as I mentioned before, is accurate. So right now it's default, it's set to 15 years for the vehicle, and since I chose the model year, 2005 up here and 2007 down here, and it's 2017, it's going to have the remaining lifetimes only a little bit, and this will affect the calculations to some extent. So just check to make sure that that's accurate for all the values you want, and that's really all you have to do. Yep. Okay, so once you've inputted all that stuff, oh, and I should also mention, so it comes equipped with this number of vehicles, because most of our users probably aren't going to have more vehicles than that they're going to run an analysis on. But if you do want to have more vehicles, all you have to do is just select the entire row, and I'm just going to, let's say I wanted a few more vehicles, I'm just going to do a Control D right here, and it's going to copy. And this is just an Excel trick. If you don't want to do that, you can also just go on over here. Oh, here we go. Yeah, or you can just like kind of copy paste. There we go. Because the formulas are the same across the whole row, so just include as many as you want. Okay, so now that you've inputted all of your cars, you've got the data for them. Hey, what happened to my gasoline fuel use? Okay, well, I guess I'll have to redo that. Oh yeah, because I clicked the undo button, that's why. Okay. Yeah, so now that I've got all the information right here, it's all good to go. And you can take a look at this if you want, but this is where all the calculations are happening. So it's a little bit of a beast. So now you can click on the footprint outputs, and it's pretty short, pretty to the point. We've got the air pollutants, and we're looking at the passenger car, so that's what we've got. We've got energy use and externality costs, petroleum use, GHGs, yeah, basically just a whole bunch of stuff. And all this data is also expressed in more visually appealing graphs. So that's how you can do your analysis. And you can run multiple vehicles at the same time, as you can probably tell by all these blank spaces. Let's say I also have a fleet that I have passenger cars, but I also have a fleet of combinations short-haul trucks. Say I've got a fleet of these and I've got data for all this stuff or whatever. Then it'll also run the same thing at the same time. The rows are relatively independent of each other. So yeah, I hope that was a little bit useful to you. Feel free to check out the other tutorials 1, 2, 3, and 5 if you're interested.